Oh hey, didn't see you there. And right now you can't see me, because I am sick. Yeah, allergies and an ear infection will do that to you. So I'm coming at you from the narrative void of YouTube. So yeah, I am actually sick and not in the best presentation to show myself on camera. However, I didn't want to just leave you guys with potentially nothing this month, so I wanted to give you some sort of video, and I asked myself, what would my audience like to see? How about more of my trash opinions? So what's a good way to insert those into an editorial that's only a step above reaction videos? Lists. So yeah, this will be my first top 10 video on this platform. Now you may think to yourself that these types of videos are lazy because of how easy it is to insert whatever subject matter is within a low-hanging criteria format. Anyway, what's a good topic to kick off this new series of videos? Well, you read the title. In the world of constant media attention, we're always looking for the next big things to sweep us in the narratives. But every once in a while, we take a step back from all of that to relive past watch-throughs. Rewatching anime is a pastime in the community I don't hear talked about frequently. There are a multitude of reasons why, like how they are fresh experiences, and rewatchability varies from person to person, among others, but generally, rewatching the stories we've let brew in our heads tends to lead us to find new things to appreciate, critique, and learn from the formative watch. This list is not about those anime. Yes, just like how there's the One Pieces, Toradors, and insert whatever anime you rewatch here, there are the shows that really only get one and done. Shows that aren't bad or unappealing per se, but rather don't quite leave a hearty impression one way or another, though they do have notable things to them regardless. And today we're looking at 10 of them that I think deserve a look. Once. Now let me preface this with a few notes. One, when I refer to them as one watch-through anime, I do think they're legitimately good in their respective aspects that I feel deserve to have some acknowledgement. Secondly, this isn't a complete definitive list, and I'm sure other people could add their own opinions on what they believe are worthy of these criteria. And on that note, these are just my opinion. If you find yourself watching these more than once, that's great. They certainly deserve having more attention to them. I just personally didn't find much else to see in them that warranted multiple watch-throughs. Which is funny because I actually have seen all these shows multiple times, but all in all I didn't have any new feelings regarding them during or after those times, so I guess that's where my barometer is on that regard. But despite that, I do like these shows for the respective moments and parts to them that make them stand out even as one watch anime, and I'll explain what those parts are, I guess now. This is the top 10 one watch through anime. Number 10. Bento. As far as anime plots of the early 2010s go, kids beating each other up for half-price pre-made meals certainly was a choice to make an adaptation out of. Or maybe the show actually takes place in the future if things keep going the way they are. Well, as far as the actual show goes, it exists. Alright, so most of the show is pretty subpar. The characters are one note, the writing's corny and uninspired, and the overall atmosphere is very high-stakes shonen with little to come out of it. But with that, there are 3 things to really appreciate about it. Firstly, the music's really good. Like, it's not award-winning or anything, but it certainly gets you in the mood for bare-knuckle bento brawling. Secondly, it takes itself a bit too seriously. It's kind of fun knowing that there are such high stakes and conspiratorial subplots to the show about discounted lunchboxes. It's entertainingly ridiculous enough for you to take it at face value. And lastly, and most importantly, the fight scenes are godly. I'd say watch the show for those alone. They're so crisp and fast-paced. They're legitimately some of the best contained fight scenes of all of the 2010s. The impact, the choreography, the camera movement, it's all so dynamic that you have a feeling that this is where most of their budget went into. It might only be worthy of being consumed once, but trust me when I claim you'll be glad you ate it up. Number 9. Beelzebub. With the amount of shonen jump titles out there practically synonymous with the word anime, it's hard to think that there are a few that aren't held in that pedestal in some way. Beelzebub, a story about a delinquent suddenly becoming the caretaker to a prince of demonkind, seems to be a long-forgotten part of Jump's publishing history during the time where the memorability to its contemporaries is almost comparable. As for the show itself, it's honestly not hard to see why. The story is fine, but it's really drowned in lukewarm shonen tropes and attitudes, and can frankly be kind of annoying at times. So what makes Beelzebub worth a watch? Well, it's gonna sound weird, but I find the history and culture, or lack thereof, of the show fascinating. Like I said, it's not really remembered among the recent Jump pantheon. 15 years is recent, okay? I'm not old. And despite the clumps I, and I'm sure other people may have with it, it still has a few solid jokes and characters there. Plus the absurd imagery is amusing with and without context regardless. I was actually deciding between this, Sket Dance, and Medaka Box for this spot, but I think Sket Dance has an equally fascinating point to it, as I've talked about in my Annie Weber review of it, that warrants a few comebacks, and Medaka Box has too. Beelzebub. Hellishly interesting? Yeah. Interesting enough to circle back to it? Eh. Number 8. When supernatural battles became commonplace. Alright, so I've talked about this show a bit in my last video, but what the heck, new recording session, new summary. A literary club gains superpowers. It's up to them to hone their new skills responsibly while also struggling with the pre-existing condition of being teenagers. It doesn't help that the main character is a total cringelord. Aside from pretty stellar animation by Studio Trigger, it's an okay show. The plot's unique enough to tell its narrative themes while the characters aren't all that bad, though I wouldn't necessarily say they're fantastic either. But as a collective, it's passable. Like, the writing's not all there, and the general tone is campy and bright while also not being particularly distinct. But if you saw my last video, you know why this is here. One scene can change the outlook of an entire show. InoBato is proof of that. In a very compelling, heart-wrenching, revealing moment, this girl, Hatoko, tries to have a conversation with the main character despite not understanding his way of acting. When he brushes her off, that's the final straw. There's a long-deserved 3-minute monologue calling him out on his shifty behavior, from being a bad friend to half-heartedly doing research for his character, to probably the worst offense, being cringe. There's nothing but raw emotion whilst also revealing the pain of being left behind and neglected, and it's all laid bare to a clueless protagonist. It's beyond cathartic. I won't spoil more of it for you, but essentially, watch the show for this scene alone. Admittedly, while the anime itself really is only worth a single viewing, the rewatchability of this scene is up there with the greats like Rock Lee vs. Gaara and the final recital of Your Lie in April. InoBato. As soon as you see it, you will understand. Number 7. Hyakko. Be honest, how many of you know about this show, let alone remember it? I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't for either of those questions. Hyakko, in the grander scheme, isn't too significant to anime of the same kind. It's a school gag comedy. You know, in the same vein as Nishijo, Azumanga Daioh, and Daily Lives of High School Boys, but not nearly on the same level in recognition. My personal theory as to why that would be is that it doesn't feel like a school gag comedy. Sort of. Hyakko is very contained within its brand of jokes, making it closer to a typical slice-of-life comedy. Shows like Nishijo and Azumanga work because of the absurdist lengths they go to for their gags. Hyakko's jokes certainly fill the criteria to be one too, but at the bare minimum, there are wacky characters, idiotic situations they get into, and abnormal reactions to such situations, but that's all they are. There's not much more to stand out about them, like if they were too out of fashion or profoundly deep in an underlying philosophy. So why should it even be watched? I'll be honest, it's still really funny. Yeah, I know I just harped on why it doesn't stack up to its peers, but when you take those comparisons away, it's still funny. Like, watch the introduction to the main character. There's nothing really to say much about it. It got me cracking up the first time I saw it, and it'll probably crack me up when I edit this video. It's not mind-blowing, award-worthy, or any sort of philosophical, it's just a good time to burn, and sometimes that's enough. Number 6. Clean Freak Aoyama-kun. This is the only sports anime on this list, which feels weird because it seems like most of these spots should have them there. But while certain sports moments can be relived in very popular and even non-popular shows, Aoyama-kun doesn't really have those, but does have something else I find fascinating. Aoyama-kun is the ace on the soccer club, having made a national team under the age of 16. His technique? He's misophobic. He hates germs and getting dirty, and this leads him to be an excellent dribbler and dodger, much to both his opponents' and celebratory teammates' dismay. The show is very well done, but nothing too special. It has a ton of epic sports moments that let the animation shine, funny character jokes that highlight the lighter side of school, and a slow but welcoming atmosphere that revel in the weight of being a kid. But that's all very standard. You could find those in numerous other sports, slice of life, and general anime without really missing much. Even in the first episode, you can tell that the gimmick of the show, Aoyama's germophobia, is played up for laughs and sincerity, but that's about it. That's what I thought throughout the show's run my first time watching it, until episode 7. Unlike InoBato's single moment, this entire episode raised the bar from the show being forgettable to fractionally poignant. It's funny because the episode itself plays out like most of the show, with jokes and jabs centering on Aoyama's condition, except there's a deeper dive in Aoyama's psyche and what it's actually like to live the way he does, and more interestingly, how it feels to be normal. It's strange to say, but I think the show is worth it for that one episode, despite most of it being standard. It shows the benefits and advantages of disabilities while also acknowledging the downsides to them, and how even the best have hurdles they want to jump. Like its protagonist, it touches you in a way that it only could, metaphorically and with feeling. Number 5. Oresuki. If you haven't seen this show, count yourself lucky. But you should definitely see it. It is so batshit cringy and remarkably unlikable, but it frankly does not care. It's a heavy parody of harem setups and what most people actually think of them, and it leads into that with full confidence. It's amazing. The story goes that a would-be harem protagonist is called out by his 2 love interests thinking that he's gonna get confessed to. However, it turns out they're actually in love with his best friend, and as it happens, he's the side character. Well, not only do these revelations reveal his true nature, another girl comes out of the shadows to turn his life into even more of a punchline. And I dare not spoil the rest for you because, my god, it is a beautiful train wreck. Everyone's a terrible person to a degree, but they play into it as typical a rom-com cast could. It's so fascinating. Not only that, but the plot itself just turns into both an unmitigated dumpster fire while also a subtle critique on the state of rom-coms of the time. It's just baffling that everything's decently good in the show, from the colorizing to the music to even the commentary. But we're surrounded by such sociopaths and assholes that you can't take it too seriously, yet you can't hate its brazenness either. If you haven't picked up on it, I have a love-hate relationship with this show because I genuinely think the characters are awful people, but like I said, that's kind of the point. As for why it's here, I do think it's worth watching the car crash with the Kierkegaard rally next to it. Truth be told, I've rewatched this show more times than I'm willing to admit on cringe bingers, but I know not everyone will have the same reaction as me, which is why I feel it's fitting in the number 5 spot. Don't hate the rules, hate the game. Or something. Number 4. The Kawai Complex Guide to Manners and Hostile Behavior. Sometimes it's just sad to know a show that does a few elements excellently gets dragged down by another major proponent's lackluster performance. This is called foreshadowing. What makes the Kawai Complex phenomenal can only go so far, because what makes it subpar goes farther. A boy begins living in a dormitory where he meets several wacky characters as his new dormmates, including his stoic bookworm senpai. Will these two have a smooth, budding romance among this plethora of weirdos and the rom-com situations they get into? The show's main issue is the writing. It's not bad, nor is it bland. It's just average. The dialogue is believable, but average. The jokes are funny, but average. The romance is cute, but actually we'll get to that. It's a shame because I don't think, given the material, there would have been much more to do with it. Everyone, actors, directors, editors, and writers, did their part well and delivered well. It just happened that the material itself wasn't there. That being said, there are 2 points that give me reason to honestly recommend it. The first being the romance. It's actually a little above average, which doesn't sound glowing, but honestly, this is a low-key, lovely, and beautiful friendship between the main character and the main girl Ritsu, who's a really fun character on her own. You feel the evolution of their relationship in a very genuine pace. Funnily, aside from the voice acting, I think the deciding factor to its worth is the credibility and the ordinary of the writing. It's not grandiose and overreactive like in most anime. It keeps you in the mood and hides it well. The second is the artistry. The animation, lighting, sound design, and music are fantastic. Not only do they look and sound gorgeous, their experimental times are quite extraordinary too. Even if the jokes themselves aren't too funny, the way they draw them really stand out beyond a missed laugh. Even if it's not my complete cup of tea, I vividly remember both of these elements after many years of not seeing it, to a point that when I did rewatch it, I still fondly look forward to seeing them again, because frankly I probably forgot the other parts. The Kawai Complex Guide, a tragic work of art forgotten due to the lack of substantial writing. Number 3. King's Game the Animation. Unlike most of these shows where you could argue that their pros outweigh their cons to be seen as something at least decent, there is no excuse for this one. This is a bad show, and that's why I love it. Holy crap, this is awful, and my god, is it beautiful. It's a battle royale death game anime, which are usually terrible, but this one is special. A boy and his class are suddenly put into a cellular King's Game, which if you don't know what that is a common social game where a single person, the king, can order others into doing whatever under threat of penalty within reason. Except for this one. You see, in this King's Game, the unknown king orders the class to do horrible things ranging from cyberbullying to coercive SA, and the penalty is, well, I think you can guess. What sounds like a pretty awesome concept spirals into a heaping mess of edge and I am very smart mind games that make very little sense and even less of a purpose. It's funny because everything pretty much ends in the same conclusion. So and so is dead. I'm pretty sure they have a name, but who cares? Their purpose for existing is to no longer exist. It's just so absurdly cyclical. But what especially sets it apart is the relationship between the main character, a cool, battle-hardened veteran of the King's Game, and the villainess, who's a comically over-the-top bitch whose main thing is to sow the seeds of chaos for no apparent reason. The dynamic between the two is just so comically edgy. Nothing else really compares to how poorly presented this show was, from the characters known as walking cadavers, to the animation jank, to the especially wild writing of the I caught myself on so much edge mindset and attitudes. By the way, for an even weirder point, the opening is an absolute bop. Like, why did they go hard on that? They didn't have to. It's King's Game the animation for God's sake. Did they know? Look, I'm sure people worked their best on it, but it's too far gone in being a ridiculous extremity of a conspiratorial mystery that it loses itself in the phantom weight of death without saying much else. But my god, it is just so entertaining in that extreme that everyone should watch it for how not to present death. Or animation. Just don't die laughing. Number 2. The Fruit of Grisaya. Or is it Grisaya? Or whatever. How is it that among these shows that lack definable or significant writing, that the best comes from an anime based off a video game? Yeah, this video game anime did something that surpasses those from light novels and manga. Granted, it's a visual novel, which is pretty much a digital light novel, but the point still stands. A boy with a mysterious past enrolls into high school, where he meets other students, all girls, who find themselves in a similar situation. And honestly, the less I say, the better. Not only is the writing good though, it's fantastic. And again, it's weird saying that because it's a harem visual novel anime. Those tend to not have fantastic writing, let alone good. It's so good, it staged me off from ever watching it again. Story time. My first time watching it, way back when I was getting into the medium, I thought I was getting a standard harem anime. I came out of it deeply traumatized. The backstories to the girls are increasingly upsetting, but told in such a great way that it's hard to forget how impactful they are to both the characterization of those affected, and how I see emotional motivation in backstories like these in anime. And when I say upsetting, I mean it, as the backstory to one of the girls disturbed me in how well written and demented it was. It was such a sadistic twist that I loved, but couldn't imagine seeing again. Since then, I grew some balls and seen the show a few more times. Not any easier, mind you, I'm still reeling from the trauma. And I am aware of the additional parts to it, though I've yet to watch those. But thanks to how great the character writing and the backstories were, I do owe it a bit for opening my mind to an aspect of anime I love analyzing now. And to that, I do recommend it. And if you're like me, watch it once and then never again for a long time. And the number one anime to watch through once is Great Pretender. This is the show closest to me recognizing as something to perhaps watch more than one time, and it's not hard to see why. It's a fun show with a bright cast, stellar animation, an exciting plot, awesome music, and excellent talent behind it. But as per usual, there is a noticeable blemish in this heist to take note of. Makoto Edamura is a petty conman who's conned himself into joining the ranks of more experienced thieves. They jaunt around the world looking to swindle and con some of the most powerful men in the world, all for the sport of it. Every moment feels like a grand scheme. It sells it well and then pulls the wool over your eyes to reveal an even greater dividend. It's quite a meta cycle. That's because you're on this ride too, and it's up to you if you can see through the facade of the plan's niche colonist cook-up, or if you'll be another one of their victims. It's especially worth it for the tangential character moments, as the chemistry between the members of this con party is very genuine. You get the sense that they are thick as thieves, but have issues in themselves that prevent them from being friends. Place that alongside great backstories as well as fun personas on their own, and their nearly future household names. The schemes themselves are very fun, and well paced and tied into a unique tale to spin, as well as a certain character's personal story. In addition to that, the way they tell them through the animation and the sound is amazingly well placed. With Studio was behind it, and they knocked it out of the park, so if everything's so good, how could any possible faults come out of it? Well, here's where I think it gets muddied. The writing. That's not to say it's bad, it's not. But I think it's a little convoluted, and not in the intentional way. Here and there are confusing aspects to the plan that do get addressed later, but here's the thing. There are still some weird inclusions to them that almost serve no point. There are some that don't get addressed. Hell, there are times where the plot's not the issue, but rather the intent of leaving the audience in a daze. There's keeping us in the dark, and then there's completely omitting important or notable points until the last second to get that upper hand on the audience. The difference is the design. If your sole purpose is to keep the mystery afloat while still providing context and clues for the audience to keep up, that'd be fine, and to their credit, they do that. But if your purpose is to withhold the necessary facts just for the sake of one-upping your base, then it's nearly pointless, as it amounts to a deus ex machina, which doesn't happen often, but it does happen, most notably in the ending, which itself was all kinds of stupid. But let me be clear, I do not hate this show. I don't hate any of these shows. They're all complex enough to warrant the attention needed for at least one genuine viewing, and are all fascinating in their own designs. And again, it's not like I'm the king of anime. The world's not ready for that. My opinions on rewatchability of these shows are only mine, and if you find yourself multi-watching one or more of these, whether to experience them one more time, or to find greater meaning in them, or simply because you want to for no good reason, then that's excellent. It's shows like Great Pretender and all else that really capture the imagination, even in one viewing, because as you just saw, they still left an impact on me enough to dedicate a reasonable amount of time to them. So all in all, whether if it's once or more than once, the influence of anime that left an impression can't be stopped, even in sickness. And that'll do it for me this time around. Let me know in the comments if I missed a certain anime, or if I'm completely wrong about one of them. It's all in good fun. And again, I'm sorry I couldn't provide a normal vid for you this time, but I promise to be back with more jokes and more me next video. And if you want to see more content like this in the future, like top 10 lists or me not being on screen, let me know. But now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going back to bed.